So remember a while back, Amber was laughing because you and I were in the kitchen and we were talking about possession movies and you were just like, oh, we should watch The Exorcist. And I was just like, no, The Exorcist scares me too much. And Amber was laughing because, we have a horror movie podcast.
Yeah.
Are there any movies that you would never watch again?
Oh, I don't know if I'd say like never, but possibly The Hills Have Eyes, just because like the rape scene in that is very gratuitous, and that makes me super duper uncomfortable.
Yeah, I don't like horror movies with like sexual violence. That's kind of like a no for me.
Yeah, I don't think it really contributes very much.
I think there's so many movies where you can do good horror without sexual violence.
Yeah, like almost always you can do good horror without sexual violence.
Sorry, I keep sniffling.
I'll sniffle too.
Okay, yeah, so not The Hills Have Eyes.
Yeah. Besides that, I'm torn on Funny Games because it is a very disturbing movie, but I also think it's an incredible piece of art. So even though I hate watching it and it makes me like squirm and like makes me like ill to watch, I still respect it as a piece of art, and I would like show it to other people with a lot of disclaimers.
Yeah.
Have you seen Funny Games?
No, but I remember you and Joe were talking about it.
Yeah, it's pretty fucked. It's very fucked up.
For me, The Exorcist is pretty upsetting. Like, I feel like it was definitely worth seeing once. I recommend seeing it once, but it's pretty disturbing to me. I don't want to watch it again.
What was it about it that got to you?
Just like the mother and the daughter relationship, and like that the mother has to watch all of this stuff happening to her. And I guess we deal a lot with that sort of topic on this show, but I don't know. I just found it really upsetting.
Well, put a coin in the Hereditary jar, but like, don't you feel like Hereditary?
I don't want to watch Hereditary again either.
Gotcha.
That's on my list too.
All right, I feel like that has like similar parent-child.
Yeah, I hated
dynamics.
that. I mean, no, it was a good, but I hated I think it's a superb. I think both of them are really excellent movies that I never want to see again. The final one, I think these are my three. Ju-on. That fucked me up so much. Oh, sorry. That messed me up.
Are we not swearing?
No, I don't know. Grandma told me after the last episode that she was a little displeased by my cursing.
Really?
My gratuitous cursing.
That's funny.
Whereas Mom called me on the phone. Don't do that. I thought we had agreed you wouldn't do that.
Sarah's screen just turned off. That's who she's talking to.
You were plugged in, bestie. So before you got here, Maddie and I were just like discussing movies that we never want to watch again, because a while back we're talking about possession movies and Maddie was saying, we should watch The Exorcist. And I was just like, no, that movie scares me. And Maddie's partner was laughing because she's just like, you guys have a horror podcast. You don't want to watch a movie because it scares you. So then we were talking about movies on our I never want to see this again list.
That's fair. I don't think I have one that I would never watch again, but like kind of an odd, like left field choice that like actually truly scared me was Paranormal Activity, like the first one.
So scary. Yeah.
Yeah, does kind of sit with you.
Yeah,
that was disturbing.
I was not scared while I was watching it, but it was the next day when I was thinking about it, and I'm like, oh, that did stick with me.
That movie is so mundane that like things like if you just wake up in the middle of the night, it's off-putting. You're like, wait,
yes.
Why am I waking up right now?
Yes, that's exactly right. Yes.
For me, it's the ending of that one. It's like I can make it through the whole thing without really being scared, and then Just
Mm-hmm.
the escalation at the very end is like too much for
Mm-hmm.
me.
Yeah, it's scary.
So I guess I'm going to introduce you. We are so lucky today to have Brittany as a special guest. Brittany, who I have met as Bookmarked by Brit on Instagram, is a book reviewer and fellow horror movie lover who you can check out her gorgeous bookstagram, like I was saying, at Bookmarked by Brit, where she posts amazing things like book recommendations based on your favorite potato, which is incredibly creative and also just awesome. You should check it out. And everyone has a favorite potato. So then you'll get a great book recommendation. So, and just also post really superbly written and insightful book reviews. And I think you read a broad variety of genres. So I think there's something for everyone.
Yeah, I try to. I think that's the great thing about reading is that you can experience so many things that maybe would scare you at first or that are new to you, and you're not sure if they're going to be scary or to broaden your horizons. So I love it.
Yeah. Okay, I know we're going to get into horror movies, but how did you get onto Bookstagram?
That's a really great question. So, um, not to like sound super like sappy, but I was going through kind of a low point in my life.
Hey, that's
A
me too. That
company,
was me.
yeah, yeah. I was going through kind of a weird transition where I had, spent so much time and energy in a job that I felt that I really loved and that really loved me back. And they went through a round of corporate layoffs, and I was laid off with a letter that said, "Dear Associate," not
Oh
even
my
my name.
Oh my goodness. That's
So,
so
That's
yeah,
impersonal.
awful.
I know. So I took some time off from working and kind of said, okay, like if I'm going to invest my time into myself and obviously I have to redo some priorities here because my worth is not tied to working and being good at working. So,
Hmm.
what else do you like to do? So, I kind of stumbled into the book community by accident that way. And now here I am.
That is awesome. And I love each and every one of your reviews. They're always like, I don't know, you always point me in the direction of like really cool new books. You always have great recommendations and really good reviews. So,
Oh, thanks.
one of the first questions we want to ask you is just I know you're a horror movie fan. How did you get into horror movies? What's your origin story?
So I don't want to like out my mom. Sorry, mom. But my mom was an avid horror movie watcher when we were growing up. And it was kind of like that taboo thing that we weren't allowed to do with her. So we would always try and sneak and watch the movies kind of as she was watching them when she thought that we weren't there. So I probably was exposed to horror at far too young of an age. Actually, one of the very first movies that I did watch was The Exorcist. So it's so funny
Oh,
that you
funny.
brought that up. But yeah, so we kind of discovered that we enjoyed watching horror, my sister and I actually, at the kind of the same time when we were quite young. And I've loved horror ever since. It's a really great, I think, social commentary. And
Hmm.
there's so many things that you can say through horror that would just be incredibly obtuse and obscene to say any other way. So
Amen.
It's so true. Do you and your sister still watch horror movies together?
yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome. Do you have any favorites?
Oh man. So my sister and I like wildly different horror. So I think like we watched pretty well all of the classics together when we were
Hmm.
growing up. So like I would say like kind of the big names in horror were the ones that I grew up watching. So like obviously The Exorcist, The Shining, Nightmare on Elm Street, Paranormal Activity was one of my sister's favorite films. Obviously not one of mine.
Hmm.
Um, the one that we watched together recently that is also very spooky to me was The Babadook.
Oh, yeah, that one's
Um,
spooky.
ooh, yes, I love that one. It did scare me, but I do. Yeah, we both love that one.
Yeah, I totally get that. Um, do you consider yourself, you seem like you don't get easily scared to me. Like, do you consider yourself easily scared or what is scary to you?
I would agree that I'm not super easily scared, and the only reason I say that is I tend to feel very pragmatic most of the time.
Hmm.
So I can generally like find a way to like pin myself down and say, okay, so this is the part that could be real. This is just your brain like overreacting and trying to make you feel the feels.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But it really depends on how close it gets to things that could actually happen. Anything like disaster related or climate related, I find
Mm-hmm.
terrifying.
Amen.
Um, yeah, those are the things that I think like truly scare me.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can totally see that. What are your we kind of talked about favorites a little bit, but like what are your favorite types of horror movies? Like this was a found footage movie. We watched
Mhm,
Noroi the Curse. Do you
mhm.
like found footage or what are your favorite types?
Yeah, I would say I like found footage. I think anything with like a psychological edge, I really like. So anything that things aren't exactly as they seem, or you have to work a little bit to put together kind of what's going to happen at the end. I enjoy a puzzle. I would also say like totally off and in a totally different realm. I love a haunted house.
I love a haunted house too.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are, I think, kind of the two favorites that I would say. Something kind of psychologically and puzzly, and then like just a pure haunted house film.
What's one of your favorite haunted house
Yeah,
movies?
that's a good question.
Let's see. So I don't know if you would say that this is necessarily a haunted house film, but I loved the Poltergeist films. Um,
Oh,
I've never
okay.
seen those actually.
oh, they're really good, and it's kind of this idea that this like really mean-spirited kind of demon is in your in the objects in your house and is kind of waiting for the right vessel.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
it totally scary.
That sounds really good. I would totally check those movies out. Have
Yeah,
you seen
I
them?
loved them.
I don't actually think I've seen The Poltergeist. If I have, it's been a really long time, but that's one that I think isn't it like rated PG or something like that, and then they had to like change the rating system.
Yes, it was originally a friendly film.
Yeah, that's
That's
ridiculous.
Yes,
funny.
I've heard a lot of people who were
it was
traumatized by that.
definitely not a friendly film. Yes.
Have you watched any horror movies recently?
Actually, I think the last one we watched was this one, was Noroi.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mhm,
otherwise, like honestly, life has been kind of crazy, so I haven't been able to sit down and watch a movie in a while.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
mhm.
What about you?
I guess a couple of weeks ago it was Halloween, so I did get together with some friends and I watched one of my all-time favorites, which is Grave Encounters. We've probably mentioned that one on this show before. If we
Mm-hmm.
haven't, I love that movie. Have you seen Grave Encounters?
I have seen Grave Encounters.
I don't know what it is about it. I think it's just like the switch, like from comedy to horror, and
Yeah,
just how it escalates. It gets me. It hits the right notes for me. And also, I don't know, just it seems like a relatively like low budget film, and
yeah.
is pretty effective for what it is. I also we watched
Insidious.
Insidious,
Yeah.
and you hadn't seen that before.
I had not seen it because you recommended Insidious and we had been
Yeah.
together. When was this? I don't remember why because we were thinking about watching Noroi and we did eventually, but
Mhm.
for some reason we didn't want to get too into something.
Oh, I think because we wanted to watch it like at night,
Yeah.
and it was the middle of the day, and
Uh-huh.
I was like, "Oh, Insidious is fun. We can watch that in the middle of the day."
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I really enjoyed that movie. I thought it was fun in like it's got the good like scare you with your friends. Like it's got the jump scares, it's
Yes.
got the creepiness.
Yeah.
But also it was really funny. Like when those guys kept getting bigger flashlights. Like it
Yeah.
was so funny.
I totally forgot about that part, and just like how funny in general it is. Like there's so many
Yeah.
comedic moments in that.
Yeah.
Yes. Love that.
That was a great recommendation. Have I watched horror movies recently? I have. So I also watched Grave Encounters with some friends
You did?
independently of Maddie. Yeah.
Nice.
Right before Halloween. Watched In a Violent Nature, which I thought was excellent. That's really, really well done on every level. I think there's another Insidious. Oh, Ben and I started watching The Fly, but he fell asleep. And that's
That's
a
a good film.
Cronenberg one.
Yeah, that's a. I haven't seen that one, but I want to watch more Cronenberg stuff.
If you like body horror, the Fly is a good film.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
don't know if I like body horror, but I like body horror.
You can appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate body horror. I don't know if I like it. Yeah.
Okay, so we've been talking about the theme of possession for a while. Does possession scare you, or like how do you understand possession? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. So honestly, possession is terrifying, I think.
Hmm.
And I think, especially in the case of kind of relating it to the story a little bit, and I'm sure we can talk about this a little bit deeper as we go through the movie, but possession, I think, was used in a lot of folklore to represent colonization or the oppressor or like this ultimate, like, forcing to conform. So it's really an effective tool to kind of take. And I always, when I'm reading Indigenous horror, whenever possession comes up, that's exactly what it means. It's the oppressor who is taking over the mind and body of the oppressed, and that is pretty terrifying because losing free will is. I can't think of anything worse.
That's a really,
Absolutely.
really cool take. Yeah, typically when I think of possession, I think of it in terms of like misunderstood like mental illness or things of that nature. But like the colonization like allegory, like that, I feel like you just opened up a whole new perspective for me with that. I'm gonna have to watch some more possession films through that perspective.
And just the word
Yeah.
possession.
Yes.
Yeah.
You are theirs, right? And I
Hmm.
think it's so interesting. And we'll talk about this. I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but
No,
like
please.
with the tiny village, what was it called?
Hmm.
Shimora? I can't
Hmm.
remember. Yeah, but with them being kind of like forcibly flooded and then kind of being absolved into Greater Japan for the dam use, I
Mm.
think it was a really good kind of connection for. Kind of possession and like colonization to kind of go hand in hand for this movie. Really
Hmm.
loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked about this movie, and I think some of the other ones we've seen, like Incantation, and also When Evil Lurks, is that they are so like ingrained in the location where they
Mhm.
are set and in the culture where there are specific like historical and the social environment is essential to the movie. So you couldn't just have
Mhm.
this like pick this up and have it happen anywhere. Like it's very
Correct.
specific to
Yes.
where it was filmed and where it was set. So, okay, we're going to talk about Noroi. Maddie, do you remember what year this film is from? It's from the early 2000s.
2005.
2005.
2005.
Mhm.
Okay, so do you want to try to do the 60-second recap? Otherwise,
Okay.
we'll flip a coin and one of us will do it. It doesn't matter.
Bear with me, and it may not be great, but here we go.
Wait, we're
So,
going to, Maddie's setting up a timer.
Okay. Yeah. uh, let me know
so
when you're ready.
okay, I'm ready.
Get set.
So,
Oh, go.
okay, so Noroi is a found footage film, kind of released in 2005, where we follow Kobayashi, who is a paranormal investigator who discovers this kind of underlying kind of demonic ring or demonic possession linked to a flooded village. Um, and it's a whole bunch of kind of chain reaction events where we, start off with things being very, I guess, kind of incidental, and then work our way into being very, very insidious and quite dark. And I don't know if that made any sense at all, but that was maybe 20 seconds of what the movie was. But at the end, it was a great film about demonic possession. And
You have 10 seconds left.
oh no, I have no idea what to say for 10 seconds.
Well, you did a really good job,
Yeah.
I think. I
That
think
was-
you sold the
Oh.
film and did a good job summarizing the essence of it and why it's compelling to watch.
Totally.
I
And-
totally understand if that is completely edited out.
No,
Oh,
we're
no,
not.
no.
We're keeping
Part
that.
of the joy of the 60-second summary is the impossibleness of the task.
So did this movie, this is a question for all of us, did this movie scare you while you were watching it? And this is not the first time you've seen it.
Yeah, this is the second time I've seen it. I would say there were a couple of moments that scared me a little bit. Like when we don't know that, well, we can assume that Kana has passed, but we
Mhm.
see kind of her spirit version under that shrine in the woods.
Yeah.
And I don't want to spoil anything, but it's covered with like a number of writhing objects.
Yep.
Hmm.
Um,
Very disturbing.
ter- Very disturbing. And then I'd say the last 10 minutes did really terrify me.
Very much so. Yeah. So this was, I believe, produced by the same producer who made Ju-on, like the
Yes.
Japanese version of The Grudge, which for me, that is on my, I'm never watching that movie again. That is probably the scariest movie I've ever seen. That movie really, have you seen it? It really messed me up.
I
Um,
have also seen it. It would also be on a list of movies that I would not watch a second time.
Very upsetting. So even though I've tried to say like, okay, on this podcast, I'm not going to find out, I'm not going to read descriptions, I'm not going to find out what happens in advance. I ended up watching this movie on my own, separately from Maddie. And I was like, I gotta just get an idea of what I'm going into, because if this is going to mess me up as much as Juan did, I want to be prepared, which it did not. It did, like this, like I would absolutely recommend this movie. It's nothing like Juan, but I did know what was going to happen at the very end, which I was glad to, because I did not watch parts of the very last scene, because I
Fair.
think that would have been upsetting. But I can imagine if I did not know what was going to happen, how shocking the ending would be.
Hmm.
Um,
Yes. I do remember vividly the first time I watched it, which was like, oh, I don't know. I think it was like 2010 or 2011. So it still wasn't like a new release or anything like that. But I do remember watching it for the first time, and ugh, just the faces that you start to recognize from other parts of the film that are now a face.
mm-hmm,
It's
mm-hmm.
was it was horrifying. Yeah.
Hmm.
What about you?
I say I found it more intriguing than scary for me. Like I loved the way that the story is told. Like I love I'm gonna totally blank on the main character or the
Kobayashi.
Kobayashi. Yeah. Um, I loved just like following him and his paranormal investigations. Like that really brought me into the film. I don't think it scared me a whole lot. But I found it very like juicy and like it definitely kept me on the edge of my seat.
Yes.
Mhm.
I
I
think
think oh, go ahead,
no,
Sarah.
you go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think that it definitely was a slow burn. Like it was very like Blair Witch esque,
Mm-hmm,
I
Mhm.
would say.
mm-hmm.
But I think that it was really effective in that it continued with the same themes throughout that consistently got like scarier and scarier and scarier. Like
Mhm.
um, the opening scenes had pigeons just being
Mm-hmm.
pigeons. And
Mhm.
as we move through the film, we learn that pigeons are the carrier of this demon. And I think
I
that
did
the
not
more,
understand that. Oh my gosh.
uh-huh.
I never picked up on
So
that. I should have.
I think as you move through the film, like looking back at those small pieces and you're like, oh my gosh, how did we get to the end from the beginning? Because I think that's one of the things I love the most about found footage films is you kind of you start in such a vastly different place from where you end. It's wild. So kind of going back and like finding out how did we get there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
those little details I think made it scarier at the beginning. Where at the beginning, honestly, it wasn't all that scary at all. But
I think the production was excellent. Exactly what you were saying, where all of these different elements come together, and like at first you don't understand how they're connected at all. There are all of these different characters. There's like a psychic girl. There's this actress.
Mhm.
There's this woman who she's complaining about her neighbor because she hears what sounds like babies crying, but her neighbor doesn't have any babies.
Yeah, that was. I'm just remembering how that all connects actually. So
yes, it
yeah.
does in a horrifying way.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
In like a yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, the way they really bring these things together, and I think you said it so well. Like it's all of these things that seem so random become really powerful and insidious by the end. what did possession look like in this movie? Who was possessed? And I think this is connected to the next question we have. What do you think the film creators were trying to say? Because for me, this was a challenging film, just in that it's been so different from the other possession films we've looked at, they've been very family focused, whether it's like a relationship with a parent, relationship with a child. Like, this seemed to have more of a social message than it did like a family, like a family unit message.
Yeah, I would agree. I think so. To start, I guess the first person who was possessed was what was her name? Junko Ishii.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So she was the daughter of I guess, the leader of the village that was flooded, and she was possessed in the ritual that was supposed to keep Koba. Oh my gosh, I can't even remember
Kagutaba.
Kagutaba at bay, and in, I guess, in the steps of actually doing the ritual, was then possessed. So she was our first possessed person. And I think this is so funny because it does go back, I think, a little bit to colonization
Mm-hmm.
and kind of the way that kind of cultural rights are buried in the sake of modernization,
Mm.
because this entire little village with their own cultures and their own customs and their own traditions was literally flooded and removed from the map in the sake of a hydroelectric dam.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think if I had to guess what the movie was trying to talk about, it was kind of the degradation of tradition, and traditional ways of doing things in the pursuit of becoming a more modern person, or, kind of moving away from traditional aspects of life, and kind of the ramifications of losing parts of yourself, because they had to dig quite deep to find really where all of this was coming from, and it's because they didn't have those links that they used to.
Mm.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that it's kind of like an interesting parallel to incantation as well, like with these kids and their like whatever TikTok or YouTube coming into this village with these ancient traditions. So I don't know, I just think it's like a cool link between this one and the one we talked about last time.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think it's interesting how the people who are in this, who remain from this village that was flooded, literally hold on to their traditions, in that they keep those
The
The
dogs,
sickles?
the
the
dogs
dogs.
and the sickles on their
Yeah.
doors. um yeah, yeah, I think that's a really good analysis of
Mm.
what is happening in the film.
So really quickly, I might have missed this,
Yeah.
but what was the significance of the dogs? Were the dogs like protectors or
Yeah. So the ritual sacrifice of the dog kept Kagutaba kind of dormant.
Mm.
So that was, yeah. So I'm not, that I could be misinterpreting that part of the film, but I don't think so. But
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
they were sacrificing the dogs for the sake of the people, and generally, as they
Mm-hmm.
explained the ritual in the movie, it was usually one dog. So when Kobayashi and Hori went back to the village and found all of those dogs
Mm.
slaughtered, we knew, like, that was the first kind of inkling of like a really big escalation and departure
Oh,
from
Yeah.
okay.
what we were expecting. Yeah. If
Yeah.
there's no dogs left, then we've got trouble.
Yeah. There was something. Okay, I wrote two things down on my phone, but we're talking to you on my phone, so I can't see it. But I remember the film starts out with a quote from Kobayashi where he says, "I want to know the truth." Is that what he says? I don't
Oh,
care what it costs.
What it costs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to know the truth, which I think is really interesting. And then what was the other thing? The other note I made on my phone. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Okay, nope, that's a different quote. That's a quote from Angel. That's a quote from
I want the truth.
Watership Down. Yeah. Okay. He says, "I want the truth, no matter how terrifying. I want the truth." Okay. So Kagutaba means
Mhm.
disaster tool spirit, like a tool capable of causing disasters. And how did you understand that?
So I would say that Kagutaba being like a tool for disaster, or like I guess the way to disaster, is like truthfully anyone who came in contact with Kagutaba was like physically destroyed.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like a bringer of death, kind of, or that ultimate destruction of life. Whereas we know that anyone who came in contact with anyone who was like either haunted or possessed by Kagutaba, they went, I think, kind of to the point where they hung themselves. They all kind of completed like the ultimate ritual that I think Kagutaba was kind of walking them through, which was, finding the next person to hand himself over to, and then kind of offloading the remains of the previous vessel.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm. Yeah, Maddie, what would you say?
I don't know if I have anything to add.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I thought that was a really good take.
I think so too. Yeah.
um, but I have a question.
Go for it.
Okay, so we are, introduced and we become kind of acclimated with this tinfoil hat guy, Hori, and
sorry.
he's like, immediately a very, eccentric character, and he
Hmm.
keeps talking about these
Ectoplasmic.
The
ectoplasm
worms.
worms,
Yeah.
and
Worms.
I understand, from the film that like he had, maybe a similar psychic connection to
Kana.
the others, to Kana, and also who's the other one? Marika.
Hmm.
Like they all seem to be having these connections with Kabutabi. But what did I mess that name up?
Kagutaba.
It's
I'm sorry.
tough.
Yeah.
It's a tongue. I'm
Uh,
tongue twisting all over this movie. So
yeah. um, so I'm wondering, because I never really was able to piece together the significance of the ectoplasm worms. Do you have thoughts on ectoplasm worms that you might share with us?
so I don't know if he chose, so I don't think he actually meant ectoplasm worms or
Mm.
ectoplasmic worms. I
Mm.
think it was a lack of understanding what he was seeing. I think
Mm.
it was so horrifying that if he had to put a label on it, he saw ectoplasmic worms. Because every person that was impacted by Kagutaba, did I say that right? I think
Yeah,
I
you
did.
did. You did.
Um,
Yeah.
so they had like the kind of that imagery of those chain links.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think maybe is where he was seeing like worms or this energy moving through those
Mm.
links.
Mhm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and also, like, just to be completely like super gross and trigger warning, this is a very sensitive topic, but the legend has it that Kagutaba was brought back the first time through consuming like animal fetuses.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And so we kind of learn that they're going through the same thing this time, but with human fetuses. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that that also could kind of add to that like really horrifying imagery. And how
Yeah.
do you label something so horrible?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Right. Why would you even think that that is
what it
something? Yeah,
is.
it's beyond
Yeah.
comprehension. Yeah, that was really disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things that's an interesting. Yeah, we've been talking about how horror can go places that you can't really go in other genres and other, um, I don't know, medium, but that is so interesting where you can have this really horrifying concept and you don't actually have to do anything scary on the screen. Just thinking, just the thought is very disturbing.
Hmm.
And I think that's really an interesting way that horror can interact with audiences.
Yeah, and I think especially like in the North American market, our level of horror is so tamed down compared to other areas of the world where they address things more directly,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
and probably to the benefit of most people because there's not as much illusion or beating around the bush. You can say things more directly, or other cultures say things much more directly than we do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because there's a lot of moderation in terms of what can be said. But yeah,
What questions did this movie leave you with? And like the questions it kind of left me with were ones that we've really addressed that I think you have really addressed excellently. Were like, what were the creators trying to say with this film? What was going on with all these different pieces, with Marika knotting these ropes in her sleep, which that was pretty scary.
Hmm.
Sleepwalking, possession and sleepwalking, I think often have a connection because it's when someone behaves in a way you can't explain.
Hmm.
But yeah, that I think we really, this discussion has helped me understand, like, get a better comprehension, better grasp on the movie. But did the movie leave either of you with some questions or any questions?
I had one.
Yeah, yeah,
What happened to Kobayashi?
yeah. You, if this was like an American franchise or like a North American franchise, um, that would be setting up for a sequel, and I don't think there is
Hmm.
a sequel.
There's no intention for a sequel. Mm-mm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
Such a
think,
big question mark, though.
yeah.
yeah, I think one of my big questions is, I have to look at the name again. Hori, yeah, the tinfoil hat guy. My big question is like, what is his backstory? Like what has his life been like that he,
Yes.
and also like I got the impression of like maybe there's like something else going on with him, like in addition to being a psychic, like maybe just how did he come to be living in this tinfoil covered house and with his like interesting mannerisms and his like challenges communicating. Like I want to know I want to know more about him. Like he
Mm-hmm.
was such a fascinating character to me.
Yeah, agreed.
Mm-hmm.
And then another question we ask a lot of the times is like, did it scare you while you were watching it, but also did it stay with you afterwards? Like, did it continue to scare you, or was it just something that was in your head that you were thinking about in the days after watching it?
So I would say that other than a couple of select points, it didn't scare me while I was watching it,
Mm-hmm.
but it was something that I thought about a lot after both times that I've watched it. And I think that the second time I watched it, I came out of it with even more than I got out of it the first time. Like it really does do better, I think, on that second watch where you can
Mm-hmm.
through and connect things faster and earlier in the movie. I honestly, I could probably watch it again and I'd probably still have like more to take away.
Yeah, I think
Mm-hmm.
it was really well done. What about you? Did it stay with you?
I think it stayed with me, in particular, like the whole aspect of the, like I don't think it stayed with me in a scary way
Mm-hmm.
necessarily, but it stayed with me in like I come back to thinking about like the game show where they have all these
Yeah.
Oh,
children with
yes.
like psychic abilities or supernatural abilities that are all like competing on this game show, and I'm just kind of like that's just kind of dropped in there as like, oh, this is a given, this is just a thing. So yeah, I that's one thing that stayed with me is, first of all, are there like psychic game shows in Japan, and how can I watch those, because I would love to. And yeah, just I guess like what else in this world is in this universe that they've built is like kind of taken for granted that they just kind of like sneak in there. It's
Yeah.
This is so
yeah, it's such a puzzle.
this is so extra. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. Um
Every time you sneeze, I'm just gonna put a fart noise in.
I think I heard that the game show, was it a game show? It's not really a game show. That segment about like the new, how would you describe that segment we were just talking about?
I don't know. I mean, it seemed like it was like a competition to see like which
A
of the kids
competition.
could get the closest to identifying the images and summoning the water.
I think I heard that show, and then, Marika Matsumoto is playing herself. And then I also heard that those two guys who go into the shrine with her are like, I don't know if they're comedians, but they are like kind of
Celebrities.
celebrities or personalities, kind of like YouTube personalities. So I think that probably, like, the way they incorporated these real elements
Mhm.
contributed to, I guess, the atmosphere of the film. I thought that was a
Yeah.
really cool thing to do.
Yeah. Agreed.
Do you want a
You were gonna
Kleenex? I
have
can
to.
get you a Kleenex.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
I'll
You're
go
gonna
get.
have
I'll
to
get you a
insert
Kleenex.
so many fart noises.
Don't even worry. We
Um,
all get a little sneezy.
so we have a few more questions left. But one of them is, would you? I mean, you literally did recommend this movie.
Great recommendation, by the way.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a really good recommendation, and I think we can all agree. I would recommend this movie also. It's not one of those. It's not going to get you with jump scares. It's not going to get you with like your traditional like tropes or.
But it's like it's a mystery. It's like a puzzle that like
It's a
comes together,
puzzle,
and it's
and it is very creepy. It's one that like
Yes.
conceptually is very creepy.
Yeah. I would say if you like a slow burn and you like to kind of like find your own way through a movie, it's a great pick. It's definitely not going to explain anything to you until it's ready. So you have to be ready to pick up some of the pieces as you go. But I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And this might be a question for like we'll have to be in communication about, but do you have any other movie recommendations, possession related or other? Like just any other horror movie recommendations in general? Or horror book recommendations or just general book recommendations.
Well,
What are
I have
the Brittany Bookmark by Brit approved
oh my goodness.
recommendations?
Well, I have about 1 million book recommendations.
Which is another
But-
reason why everyone should go and follow you.
Yeah. Follow Brittany. Bookmark by Brit.
I would say so. We talked, I guess, a lot about some of my favorite horror films. But if you're looking for something super spooky, I know you guys liked it too. Couldn't recommend The Babadook more. I will look up some of the other J horror films that I've liked, and I'll send them through to you because there is something spectacularly spooky about Japanese and Korean horror.
True.
Just as a subgenre, love it. For reading, I think I haven't been reading a lot of horror lately, but I would definitely recommend if you kind of like the topic of possession and you like kind of the idea of colonization as an aspect of possession, I would definitely recommend Bad Cree. So if you kind of like that kind of thinking about colonization as a way of possession, that book does an incredible job. And if you just like possession short stories in general, I would highly recommend Never Whistle at Night.
Never Whistle at Night. I love that name.
So good. So I read a lot of Indigenous horror. I think it is just endlessly scary. And it's a collection of Indigenous horrors. Kind of, I wouldn't call them horror stories. They're dark stories. They're teaching tools, and they do a very good job.
Yeah, that one's been on my radar for a while of just books to check out. It looks really good, and I've heard good things. So those are awesome recommendations. Speaking of Korean films, one that I really want to check out while we're looking at possession is The Wailing. Have you seen that one?
I don't think I have.
That one, I've heard it's like a really classic kind of core possession film. So that's what I want to check out.
On the topic of Indigenous horror, have you seen the movie Clear Cut?
Yes, I have.
And that's one that I've been kind of wanting to watch with Sarah and maybe talk about on the podcast because I just thought it was really interesting commentary. But yeah, did you like that one? I'm curious.
I did like it. I would say it's definitely faster paced than the one we just watched. But I would say that you'll probably take away some similar things from it, as well as some other really important social commentary. So,
yeah, those are pretty much our questions. Where else can people find you?
if they want to find me, just on my Instagram at Bookmark by Brit. I also run some read alongs. So if you wanted to read along with me in real time on the story graph,
That's
and
awesome.
some of this weird rambling happens in real time. So you can see me put
Yeah.
together some of these puzzles.
I would
um,
love that.
Yeah, I can't get enough. That's so fun.
Mhm.
yeah. So honestly, we should there has to be something like that for movies, but I don't know if there is. But yeah, so I'm on the Storygraph and Goodreads. You can find me there if you're interested in hearing what I have to say, as rambling as it is.
I think your recommendations are fantastic. And if anything, this conversation has like solidified that even more.
Yeah, and just thank you so much for sharing your analysis and your perspective. Like, I feel like you brought so much to my experience of the movie that, like, I'm gonna be thinking about what you were saying after this conversation for sure. And also, just meeting you is wonderful. You're such a cool person, and
Hmm.
you
Oh,
do so much cool
thanks.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, my finger knitting, so cool.
As long as it's not those loops,
Yeah, no finger
No,
knitting
oh,
the
oh my
ectoplasm
gosh,
worms.
no,
not the ectoplasmic
no,
worms.
oh my gosh.
I tried to put together this meme. It didn't work out. But did you ever see the meme that's like, when will the loops be ready, brother? Have you seen
No, what is
it? Have
this?
you seen it?
don't think I have. The only thing I can think, what was that? There's that video game thing that my husband always tries to show me, where there's something brother, and I have no idea what's going on. But it reminds me of that,
It's
and I'm equally lost.
This is probably it because it's a screenshot I think from a Zelda, and it's just like
Okay.
this person and this cat standing next to a pot of like Fruit Loops. And they're saying, when will the loops be ready, brother? And I tried to edit it in
With like the loops
the
from the
loops
movie.
from the movie, but I couldn't really find a good picture, so it didn't really work out. But thank you so much for joining us. This has been awesome, and I can't wait to check out more of both your book recommendations and any movie recommendations you have. This was such an excellent movie that was not on my radar at all.
Yeah, same. And strongly second everything Sarah said. And I also would like to just wish you warmth and comfort in the cold Canadian air.
Oh, I know it's coming. We don't have like officially snow on the ground yet, which we should be thankful
Oh
for
my gosh.
because most of the time that happens in October.
Mhm.
So,
Hmm.
but yes, thank you for your warm wishes. I will take all of them. It was so nice to meet both of you. I know Sarah just through kind of the internet, but that's just typing through a screen. So
Yeah.
it's
It's
nice
been
to chat with you.
That's one thing I really love about like Bookstagram is that I think a lot of the time on the internet it feels so fake and it feels so distant, but I really feel like the relationships I've made on like through this book community have been so genuine. And it's funny because I'm finally meeting a lot of these people who I've connected with online face to face. And I really feel like it's making genuine connections with people that are, and it really feels like a community that people are interacting with each other not for likes and not for clout, but it's really to like this passion for reading and this enthusiasm for talking to other readers. And I think that's really special. And I'm so glad that we have met that way. So I think that's, are we gonna wrap it up?
Yeah, we can wrap. Any last comments or things you want to shout out before we let you go?
Honestly, I just am really grateful you guys invited me to come and chat with you.
You're our
Um,
first guest.
And I hope that
uh,
Well, I
I
guess besides Ben, but
Ben, I was going to say Ben doesn't count, but Ben doesn't listen to
Ben.
this show. We would genuinely love to have you on again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
you guys
Um,
are so sweet.
I hope you have an incredible evening and rest of your week.
You too. Thanks again. It was so great to meet both of you.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Well, that was so cool talking to
Awesome.
Brittany. I
Yeah.
feel just so grateful to hear the perspective of somebody who's like, honestly, I think smarter than me about thinking about this movie. I don't know about smarter than you because you're pretty smart too, but
No,
like
she
just
put
her
this.
analysis was so much more in depth than like the level that I was watching the movie at. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you saw these connections that I had no idea were there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Her, she really put it in perspective in a way that I was not able to. Because even when I first stopped by your apartment this evening, I was just like, what was that movie about? What
Yeah,
were
I
they
was
trying
like,
to say?
what were
I was
the
so
worms?
confused.
What were the dogs? What was
And
going on?
Now it really makes sense. That was awesome. Brittany, thank you so much again. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much.
If you would like to be on the podcast, we love getting other people's perspectives on horror movies and on fear and on. There are so many movies we want to watch that are not just possession related, but it's hard to stop talking about possession because it's such a deep and complex theme.
Yeah, and I feel like we're going to run into this with pretty much any subgenre we talk about in the horror universe, but I feel like there's a million movies for every subgenre.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, anything else you want to say?
Smell you later, fart lord. Just kidding. I love you guys. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for putting up with my sniffles. Love you. Bye.
Bye.